Welcome to the Crazy Chicken People podcast. If you're crazy about chickens, then you're in the right place. Hello, and welcome back to the show. Today, we're talking about the fearless protectors of our coops, the unsung heroes of hen safety, our lovable, sweet roosters. Well, actually, we're talking about the ones that don't get called lovable or sweet quite as often as the others might, and seem to find themselves in trouble more often than not. I guess what we're really talking about is those roosters that we love so much because they do take such good care of our ladies, but also have a hard time dealing with because of the aggression they might show from time to time, or maybe all the time. If you've been listening to the show for a while, you've definitely heard me talk about Brock and Jeffrey, my two problem boys who, in spite of their attempts, usually aren't able to kick me any higher than my boots cover up since they're just a couple little silkies. But if I was getting the same treatment from Homer or Big Boy when I went into their coop, it'd be a different story. They're a couple of big mature roosters, a Moran and an Americana, who could do some real damage to my shins if they wanted to. Luckily for me, I've never had that issue with them outside of one time that Big Boy came after me. Or I guess I should say the one time he thought he needed to protect the flock from me, and we'll get more into that later on. And that got me thinking, why is it I have such a problem with Brock and Jeffrey, but not with those guys? I treat them all equally well. They all see me about the same amount of time every day. I think I might even spend more time around the silkies, so I'd like to think that they'd be more used to seeing me and accepting me into their world. But that hasn't been the case, at least not until recently. I've started working on some new things with them that I've learned, and I think we're making some progress. You know, it's funny, what brought on this change was actually kind of a bad situation. Some of you might have seen a video I posted a few weeks ago of Brock taking a bath in my kitchen. He had gotten some poop caught up in his feathers around the vent, and it wasn't too bad, but I do wish I would have caught it earlier. I just don't get a good look at his butt very often because usually when I see him, he's squaring up to take a shot at me. But if you saw that and saw how totally chill he was sitting in that little tub while getting his butt massaged, you might have thought, like, there's no way that's the same rooster he's been talking about. He was so calm. He never tried to jump out of the bath or take a bite at me or anything. He was really a perfect little gentleman. And I couldn't figure out exactly why his attitude had changed towards me so drastically, but I did want to figure it out so that I could keep those good vibes going with him. I mean, he's an awesome little chicken. He's one of the oldest that we have around here, behind Jeffrey. So for me, it was worth the time to dig a little deeper and figure out what to take away from that interaction with him, so that I could keep that positive momentum we had going. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Some of the new things I've been trying with all of our roosters to get them to accept me as a welcomed and non-threatening member of the flock. And that's really where it starts. Seeing yourself the way that your chickens do, either as an outside threat or as a member of the flock with a place in the pecking order. And with roosters, there's really not a lot of gray area there. In their mind, they have one job to do: protect the flock at all costs. That could mean keeping his hens safe from a predator, maybe a little kid that comes in too fast, or from you if they think you pose a danger. But if you can establish yourself not just as an honorary chicken, but as being at the top of that pecking order, then you can earn the love and respect of all the chickens in your flock, including your rooster. But before you can be the boss of the coop, you've got to figure out how to help your rooster feel safe when you come around and avoid setting him off. And you would think it shouldn't be that tough, right? I mean, it's not like they wake up in the morning thinking, I'm going to mess with the human today. They're just wired to guard that flock. The hens, the coop, maybe a certain patch of dirt they love. It's in their DNA to protect all of it. So when someone comes into their space, someone that isn't on their trusted list of flock members, they better look out, because that rooster is going to be ready to start throwing some spurs. So until you have built up that trust with them, here's some things to avoid. Probably the most important, no quick movements or anything that comes as a big surprise. If you're already on their list of potentially dangerous visitors to their space, coming in hot and fast or making a quick move to pick up a hen is only going to reinforce what they already think, that you're trouble. So try to come in slowly, move thoughtfully around their space until they feel comfortable that you're not going to surprise them. If you pay close attention, you'll see their posture go from kind of upright, staring right at you, looking very on guard, to more relaxed, back to pecking and scratching, while still keeping an eye on you from time to time. Try to avoid any sudden loud noises, a slamming coop door, dropping a rake or a bucket. Anything unexpected like that is going to put the whole flock into a frenzy. You'll hear those clucks of concern start up from everybody, and your rooster is going to be looking for the problem. He wants to make sure his girls are still safe, and if that problem is you, you're probably getting attacked. It's nothing personal, he's just doing his job. Like Jeffrey always tells me, hens before friends. One more to avoid is direct eye contact. And I'm not saying you can't look your roosters in the eyes, but if you walk in there and you're just staring him down, there's a good chance he's going to take that as a threat. And that goes for most animals too, especially predators. I mean, even humans. Imagine walking into a stranger's house, slamming the door, and then just locking eyes with them. Probably not going to get a good response from whoever's in there. And that's pretty much how your rooster takes it too. Now, to make it even worse for you, he may not just feel threatened, but he can also sense if you're scared of him. And really, he's going to interpret that as a weakness and an opportunity to assert his dominance over you. Definitely not the situation you want to put yourself in. So when you enter that space, what he sees as his space, since you haven't earned his respect yet, be cool, move slowly so that he can keep an eye on what you're up to, talk in friendly tones, yelling at him to back off isn't going to help, and be confident. Not aggressive, but you can't let him see that you're scared of him either. So now that you've got some tricks for keeping your rooster from coming after you right away, we want to learn to read his body language a little bit and understand what they're trying to tell us. You know, sometimes I'll tell somebody that I really enjoy just hanging out talking to my chickens, and they look at me like I'm crazy. I mean, that's probably a fair assessment, but it doesn't mean that I can't actually understand what they're saying. They say that between humans, as much as 90% of communication is nonverbal. So we don't have this huge gap to bridge with our animals. Body language alone makes up just over 50% of communication. So with animals, it's probably much more. Have you ever given your dog that look when you see them do something they shouldn't have, something they know they weren't supposed to do? They kind of know what you're saying. And you probably know just what they're saying when they lower their head, avoid eye contact, and slowly move away with their tail between their legs. You just had a full-on conversation with them without saying a word. And your chickens are just as capable of having that talk with you if you know what to look for. Some of the positive things you might see from them that tell you everything's cool: he's strutting around calmly, clucking and chirping, scratching around or pecking at some feed while you're standing there. And that's him telling you things are okay. If you notice he's got no problem having his back to you, he probably feels safe with you around and doesn't need to watch your every move. And if you're really lucky and have a rooster that just absolutely loves you, you might even get a little rooster dance from him or offered a treat. But then there's the bad stuff, the signs that he uses to put you on notice. Big puffed out chest, looking like he just maxed out on the bench press, raised up hackle feathers or the hard wing flap, dropping his head down low like he's ready to ram you. That's definitely trouble. He's telling you to back off or I'm throwing down. And the good news is these signs are usually pretty easy to pick up on, especially once you start looking for them. There's some vocal stuff that I've noticed too that's kind of difficult to describe. I'm not going to try to make the sound myself. I don't want you to hear that through your headphones. But Jeffrey lets out this scream. It's kind of low, and then it builds up to this long, high-pitched, I don't know, it's kind of what I imagine a pterodactyl would have sounded like. You can tell that he's mad, and I don't think he likes it when I go collecting eggs. I notice he does it a lot when I go into the coop. But the little dude's just trying to give me a heads up. You know, I don't think our roosters are trying to trick us or pull off a sneak attack. They give us pretty straightforward warnings about their intentions, good or bad, if we're paying attention and know what to look for. So now how do we get past that? We know they're mad. They see us as this threatening thing they have to protect the flock from. So, how do we show them that we're on their side? And I mean, it sounds kind of mean, but how do we take over that top position in the pecking order? And I shouldn't say it sounds mean because it's not. Just like we need our other pets to know that we're in charge, at least our dogs. I mean, cats just kind of do their own thing. But just like we have to be dominant over our dogs to get their respect and have a good relationship with them, we have to do the same thing with our roosters too. And I've got some tricks. I'm not going to say it'll be easy because it won't, and they won't work right away like some kind of rooster magic. But they don't involve any kicking, swatting with a rake, or holding a chicken upside down like I've seen suggested by some people. And that last one is really bad, by the way. You don't ever want to hold a chicken upside down. It can cause some real respiratory issues. But this will involve some patience, especially the first one. But once you get this down, I think you'll find that hand feeding your roosters will go a long way in closing that gap between you. And not just because he'll appreciate the treats, but you're kind of tapping into his instincts and using those to place yourself as the leader of the flock. I'm sure you've seen how your rooster reacts when you toss out some scratch or if he digs up a nice worm. He starts to make that kind of high-pitched sound that means, come on over, ladies, I've got something good. And in fact, that's actually called tidbitting. I think it's one of the coolest things to see a rooster do, to see how they make sure to take care of their girls first. Watching him pick up that morsel and then drop it, calling him over, they just care so much about making sure their flock is taken care of. Sometimes a lead rooster will even tidbit for another rooster in the flock, and it shows him that he cares about him, but it also reminds him of who's in charge. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. And once you have him eating out of your hand, well, you'll have him eating out of your hand. I guess that's where the saying comes from. So start small. If your current relationship involves getting chased around the coop and just hoping to collect some eggs without also collecting some new cuts and bruises, I would recommend just finding a comfortable spot to sit in the run, probably sitting on or very close to the ground, and tossing out some of their favorite treats. Slowly, you can start to get them closer and closer to the point where they're comfortable coming right up to you to pick those treats up off the ground, and that might take a few days or a few weeks of doing this. And then eventually just holding your hand out there until they come and get it. Very similar to what we talked about with the hens in a previous episode. I just recently finally got Jeffrey to take something from my hand. It was a worm that I had dug up, and he was so cautious about it. I think it took 5 or 6 tries for him to actually get that worm. He was trying so hard to stay as far away as he could while still getting close enough to take it. But he finally did. And each time after that got easier and easier. We're still working on it, and it's going to take some time to get him to the point that he'll just run right up to me like Homer does. But this is a huge first step in getting them to acknowledge you as the flock's leader. And if you find that your hens are always running up and cleaning you out before your rooster has a chance, well, that's a perfect reason to start using my next suggestion of spending some solo time with your boy. I mentioned how different Brock was that day I took him up to the house for a bath. Well, as it turns out, getting those guys away from the flock, away from where they feel they need to be the protector, puts them in a very different state of mind. So just start by picking your boy up and taking him for a little walk. When you go to do that, pick him up with confidence. I know it can be tough and you might get some resistance, but you don't want to show any fear. This is where you really need to show him that you are the alpha. But grab him up, keep his wings down, tuck him under your arm, and just take him around for a bit, away from the girls. And hopefully once you're holding him, you'll find that he's much less aggressive than you expected. I'm telling you, as soon as I got halfway to the house with Brock, he was a totally different chicken. I was shocked. He didn't fight me a bit by the time we got up there. I can't say that all the roosters will take to it this well, but just give it some time. It's going to take some patience and working on this regularly for a while. And older roosters that are stuck in their ways are probably going to be a tougher case than the young ones, but you can do this. The last thing I want to mention is just making sure your boy is getting all the extra care that he needs. Little things like keeping his spurs in check or any overgrown nails that could cause him some pain. With the silkies, make sure they can see through those puffy, feathered faces. That was something I noticed with Brock when he was getting his bath. He needed a little trim too, and I think just being able to see a little bit better is actually helping. I've had ups and downs with these guys, but the more I try to win them over, the better things have gotten. Having roosters is really cool. They're super fun to watch. I think the hens like having a guy around. And if your chicken's free range at all, he's going to be there to help keep him safe. Okay, guys, that's it for this one. I hope that some of that does help you with your boys or the boys you may end up getting this spring. Keep loving on those chickens, and I'll talk to you again soon.